Okay, I think we're good. All right. My name is Josh Couch. I am the secretary or the treasurer of the White Sutton Syndrome Foundation. Mandy and I and Renee Banks and Dante Banks founded the foundation in 2018. And I wanted to talk to you today about our CoRDS patient registry. Has anybody heard of our registry or registered for it? A couple people, okay. So I want to tell you a little bit about it. I want to tell you why we did put it together, and we partnered with CoRDS, which is a different organization, and how you can help us in our efforts. Let's see here. What is it? Let's start with what it is. It's a secure database of standardized White Sutton patient information. What does that mean? It means that the information that is gathered by Sanford CoRDS, which is a partnership, or it's a company that we have a partnership with in South Dakota, they gather information on behalf of us and on behalf of researchers who are looking to find people like our kids. That information is de-identified, so the database that they have does not have names associated with it when the researchers first gain access to it. Researchers also have to be vetted before they can access any of that information. So they don't just get to go, query a database without talking to Sanford CoRDS first. This is a partnership we started, I believe, in 2019, and we've had it live since 2020. So right about the same time that we had to cancel our first conference, we also launched our patient registry. And it's really, what we did is we decided, well, what can we do that is going to make the most impact for our community? What can we do to, further research? Well, starting out as a small foundation, we didn't have a lot of money, so we can't just go pay a researcher to do research. So we talked with Dr. Sutton and we decided, well, we're going to try to do a patient registry. Well, what kind of patient registry should we do? The easiest one is what's called a contact registry. But contact registries are basically just email addresses and names and stuff like that, so you can pass them on to researchers. Number one, that's not super helpful to researchers, and number two, it's not very safe with your information. I don't want to just take your information and then store it in a database somewhere that I can't guarantee is secure. So we decided what we wanted to do is create a registry that's the most effective tool for the researchers who are going to access it, and that is a patient-powered registry, which means you guys give the information as much as you can to a database, and then the researchers can query that data, or query with Sanford CoRDS to be able to access that data. Now, there's a couple of levels that they can do, or that a couple of levels of access that they can have. They can basically, I went too far there. They can have access to just the data, or there is a possibility, if they're doing a study, that they can talk to Sanford CoRDS and say, this individual in your database has information that we're interested in learning more about. And at that point, there's a handoff between Sanford CoRDS and you. So they would reach out, Sanford CoRDS, our partner, would reach out to you and say, is it okay if we put you in contact with this doctor? So there's never a point at which a doctor just can get, or anybody can just get access to that information. It's always very curated. So I just want you guys to feel secure. If you're not in the database yet and you want to be a patient register or registered as a patient, this is as secure as it can get. So don't feel like your information is just being treated lightly. So why did we do it? First off, I wanted to tell you, this is as adorable as this photo is, this is not a stock image. This is a little guy named Landon with White Sutton Syndrome who his parents sent their picture in, or his picture in a while ago. I'm sure he's not as small anymore, but I'm sure he's every bit as adorable. Why did we do it? One of our primary goals was to make sure that we could encourage and facilitate research, but we wanted to do so, again, in a safe way. The reason for that is because rare diseases are rare. You guys are, a very small community, not just here, but in the world. We can't necessarily, attract the type of research that we want to, if we just have one and two people here and there. We have to gather them together and make them more appealing to researchers. So that was our goal. Forgive this is kind of a messy analogy, but it's basically, small patient populations don't deliver as much return on investment for researchers as, a larger group does. So we're trying to become a larger group as best we can. We want to make researchers' jobs easier. Again, contact registries have their place, but they're not nearly as useful to researchers who are trying to get access to the information they're looking for. I mean, if you say, I have White Sutton Syndrome and here's my email address, well, they have to gather all of your information. They have to gather your genetic diagnosis information. They have to gather all of your comorbidities. They have to gather all of the historical medical data themselves. And that's a lot of effort for guys who are already trying to make the most of their own time. So we want to make that as easy as possible for our researchers by gathering all that information for them and having it ready. And we wanted to also select a registry platform that enables researchers to have direct contact, like I said. There's a couple of patient registries where it's basically just databases, and you can see trends, but you can't necessarily just, you can't figure out who this one person is that has this one particular, set of symptoms and then contact them. So there was a couple that we looked at that were just databases that we just knocked off, or crossed off our list because we wanted to make sure at the end of the day that if there's something that can be gained by research with a direct, direct contact with a patient, we could do that too. And Sanford fit that bill. Another thing that we wanted to do with our data is to be able to set expectations for new and existing families with questions. I cannot tell you how many times that I've gotten a message on Facebook or an email about, do White Sutton kids do this particular thing? Do they suffer with this particular ailment? And it's hard to answer those questions because all we had, when we started, was a Facebook group with just a bunch of stories, but no data to back that up. And so because of the way that Sanford CoRDS works, we have access to the de-identified data, and we can start to answer those questions once we can see trends. If we can see, a certain number of these kids have autism, or a certain number of these kids have cyclic vomiting, we can definitely start to answer those questions directly instead of just shrugging and saying, hey, talk to this person on Facebook who said that's something that they experienced. And another thing that we wanted to do is be able to get a little further out of our bubble and be able to find broadly treatable symptoms and comorbidities. Now, comorbidity is just another condition that you have in addition to White Sutton syndrome, just in case you didn't know. We want to make sure, again, that our population is as appealing as possible. So sometimes, like POGZ is becoming a big deal when it comes to autism research, as I'm sure you guys may be aware. That's a larger group, right? So if we have comorbidities like that that are also, something that is part of a larger group, having a patient registry that can trend those is very, very useful. Some stats that we've gathered from our data so far. 47% of the 96 people that we have in our registry right now are male. 53% are female. We have about 7.1% are on feeding tubes. 44% have an autism diagnosis. That doesn't mean that 44% of our kids have autism, because autism diagnosis, as you guys probably know, is, that happens over time. So, there's probably more, but autism diagnosis in our database, there's 44%. Big one is eye problems. There's a lot of kids with glasses, a lot of kids with things like cortical vision impairment, strabismus, things like that. There's a lot of kids that are struggling with eye problems, so that is definitely something that most of our kids do. Also GI problems, that's something that we've seen a big trend with. This is the biggest one, of course. Learning difficulties is something that we all struggle with. So, and then behavioral outbursts is also one that about 50% of kids struggle with those behavior outbursts. This is all self-reported data. So, this isn't necessarily vetted scientific data. This is what's in our database. So if you go into our database and you say on that question, yes, my kid has an autism diagnosis, that's about as far as that vetting goes. So it's not necessarily 100% accurate, but it is definitely useful information. So I wanted to play a video here. I think it's going to play on its own. Yep. This is from Sanford CoRDS.
Imagine being told, after months or years of searching, that you have a rare disease. There was no explanation for why one symptom became two and then many. And then you arrive at your answer, that there are no treatments and no cures.
1 in 10 people in the United States have a rare disease, and 2/3 of those people are under the age of 18. These are toddlers, children, and adolescents who went from having their whole lives ahead of them to having that time whittled to a certain number of years or health problems.
It's called a rare disease because you're rare. Like, there's not enough people like you, but there's enough that there's a need to address the issues that you're going through.
Sanford Health created the Coordination of Rare Diseases at Sanford, or CoRDS, as a way to advance research and find treatments by connecting rare disease patients from across the world to advocacy groups, researchers, and one another.
When you're first diagnosed, there's no doubt that it's a very, very lonely feeling. You know, you're not even 1 in 50,000 yet. You're 1 in 1. You're just alone.
The reality for rare disease patients is that not many people share their experience. They can feel very isolated and alone, faced with not a lot of information and often no treatments.
I want to be a part of the process to get a treatment, whether it's in my lifetime or not, as a patient, to be a part of the research so that I can help scientists move the needle a little bit further.
Rare disease patients hold the answers to understanding rare diseases and developing treatments. So CoRDS reaches out to them to gather information about their life, symptoms, diagnosis, and disease progression. After consenting to be a part of the CoRDS registry, rare disease patients or their caretakers complete preliminary information and then submit only as much information as they feel comfortable disclosing.
It's an area where one scientist, one lab can make a huge impact. These registries are repositories for really critical for scientists who maybe live in an area where there aren't patients that are available. Bringing these registries together for us as clinicians and scientists to have access.
The patients own all the information they provide, and it is only shared if they consent. Researchers who have completed a scientific review and have been approved can contact CoRDS to find patients, and CoRDS will contact the patients on behalf of the researcher to determine if they would like to join the study.
With a partnership between families, clinical providers, patient advocates, and scientists, it's an important piece of that puzzle where we all kind of rely on one another to kind of advance our knowledge in a meaningful way.
You don't have to be a scientist to help advance rare disease research. If you have a rare disease, are wanting to research a rare disease, or are part of a rare disease advocacy group, CoRDS is here for you.
For rare disease, you know, our strength is in numbers, and so the more we can build the community, the better off we'll be.
Right now, the CoRDS registry is giving rare disease patients hope, but one day we hope to give rare disease patients a full chance at a healthy life.
Okay, so you know why we did it, you know. Now we need your guys' help. To date, and this is actually inaccurate because there's some more people. I did, put in my notes here that 84 registrants are in our registry. We have 96 as of today, but we need more. We need to be able to attract as many researchers as we can with as broad a database as we can. So if you haven't registered already, you definitely can. I've put a QR code on the screen here. You can also go to our website and find it on there. It's confidential, it's valuable, and it's secure. They actually just recently went through a complete rebuild of their database just for the very reason that they wanted to make sure that it was as secure as it could be. So they rebuilt it from scratch in early 2024, and that's up and running now. If you're already a registrant, you can still help because things change over time. You get new diagnoses. You get, things change as far as like the things that you've already reported. So keeping your info up to date is really important. So if you have already registered, please make sure that you go in there about once a year if there's anything new that needs to be added. Especially important if you're your child turns 18, because of the way that medical records work, if you registered them as a child and then they turn 18, their data will fall out of the database after 6 months. So if you have registered somebody and they have turned 18 since then, if you haven't updated in the last 6 months, it's likely they're not in the database anymore. So please make sure if you register, there's actually a calendar reminder at the bottom of the registration page for the registry that you can set a yearly reminder to update your information automatically. So please make sure that you do that. Tell others about it. We're a small community, and obviously all of you are aware of the Facebook page, but there's other ways that we can tell people about it, and if we can get the word out there, you guys are great evangelists for that. So if you believe in what we're doing here, please tell other people about it. And also, you guys all have a team of doctors, right? If those doctors know researchers, if they are researchers themselves, please tell them about it. They can reach out to us at contact@whitesutton.org, and we can set them up with Sanford CoRDS to make sure that they have access to that data. All right, any questions? Not a one. All right, I like that. Thank you guys for listening today. I will be here again on Sunday, but from now on, I'm just going to be sitting down there where I'm more comfortable. So I appreciate your time. Just have about 5 minutes to stretch your legs. Dr. Calicos doesn't start until 5, so there's about 5 minutes and we'll get started with her presentation.